Okay, so I think we are back again. So, okay, Aya, can you hear me? Yeah?
Yes, one moment, Ajahn, I'm just going to put you back in the spotlight for the video.
Okay, thanks. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. So, don't know what's going on, but things are going on. So that's why it's so nice to meditate. Yeah, you don't have to deal with this kind of technology and all these problems. So, getting away from that. So, I was just saying, in this way, you overcome the doubts that you have by reading the sutras, by understanding all of these basic things about what, how to use your mind, etc. And then very interesting, the last thing that the Buddha says there, which I think is very important now that we're going to talk about the Noble Eightfold Path, is that it says here that it straightens out your view when you listen to these teachings. Yeah, you get right view. You understand the way the Buddha talked about this. And very often in Buddhism, when we talk about right view, we talk about things like, rebirth and karma and the idea of awakening and all of these kind of things. And of course, these things matter. These are foundational things in Buddhism, and they actually affect our practice. They affect how we think about the world. They affect what we prioritize, what we value in our life. All of these things are affected by these big picture things, such as karma and rebirth and all of that. But in many ways, there are more basic things about right view that are even more important. Yeah. And this, for example, what do we value as far as meditation is concerned? Do we value the things of the world? Do we value our ordinary life? Do we value our work and the problems that we have to resolve, the family life and all of these things? Is that where our mind tends to incline? It is important to us? Or do we value the inner peace and these kind of things? Yeah, what do we actually value? And that this actually arises from the idea of right view. And I will show you this in quite a bit of detail later on, why that is the case. And this is a right view which is not as high or as profound as the idea of rebirth or the idea of karma and enlightenment and all of that. But it is a view, an outlook, a way of looking at the world that actually matters for meditation practice to be successful. And the reason why that is the case is very simple. It's because if you value all, the ordinary things in life, the family life or the sensual pleasures or whatever, if you value that too much, it means your mind will tend to go there. Your mind will indulge, and you can see that in a meditation, that your mind leans in a certain direction, inclines in a certain direction. What does it incline to? Well, that is what you value. If your mind inclines to peace, it inclines to the happiness of meditation practice, the joy that arises and all of these kind of things, that means you are valuing meditation and you are valuing things in the way that the Buddha recommended. And all of this arises is a kind of right view. Yeah, it is about the mind leaning in the right direction, a kind of yoniso manasikara, wise attention. And this, remember, right view, it is really the foundation of the Noble Eightfold Path. It comes at the very beginning, and it allows us then to practice the morality, the right effort, and the satipatthana, the right meditation, all of that comes as a consequence of that. And it's quite fascinating that one of the things that you find when you study satipatthana carefully is that satipatthana meditation, mindfulness of breathing and all of that, it has two things as its foundation. One is, as you would expect, it's sila, is morality, your habits and your character and all of that. But the other one is view, it's called ujjukaditi, straight view. Both of these are paramount for your meditation to work. So getting your view right matters enormously. So one way of thinking about the suttas of the Buddha, is to think of it as one big mass of right view. And it really is even just the most basic suttas, the four Nikayas, the long discourses, the middle discourses, the connected discourses, and the numerical discourses. If you look at the Pali, they amount to maybe about 5,000 pages or thereabouts. So it's a lot, But all of that really is just an expression of right view. So whenever you pick that up, whenever you read that, you're entering that world of the right view. There, the Buddha is talking to you, telling this is what the world is like. This is how things work. Yeah, this is what you should prioritize. This is what you should value. This is where safety can be found, where contentment can be found. In this place, there is danger. There are problems. There are all of these kind of things, and you enter that, and that kind of becomes so helpful for this practice. And so that ties in very beautifully with the Noble Eightfold Path. Then there is the last factor. Here, the last factor is that the mind becomes placid when you listen to the Dhamma. Yeah, ideally, maybe not always, but sometimes it does. And this is another theme that you see in the suttas, the idea of listening to the Dhamma, making you peaceful and calm and putting you in the right mood. And sometimes you can listen to the Dhamma or use the Dhamma as a contemplation before entering or starting your meditation practice. Yeah, I was mentioning yesterday, I was talking about how to give rise to joy in the meditation. And one of the important ways to give rise to joy in meditation is actually reflecting on the Dhamma, yeah, reflecting on the teachings of the Buddha. What does it mean? Yeah, what does it point to? And then you realize it points to all of these marvelous things. It leads you out of problems and points you to all the things that you could ever want in this life. And then, of course, then that can, if you're in the right mood, it can then give rise to joy, happiness, and all of these kind of things as a consequence. Yeah, and then your mind becomes placid, it becomes calm. So this is kind of a twofold reason for listening to the Dhamma. One is just to understand the teachings and getting the information, how the path works and all of that. That is one aspect of it. But the other aspect is the aspect of being inspired. Yeah. And when you feel inspired, then to become calm and placid and all of these other good qualities. Inspiration is like a positive calm. Yeah. Wow, this is cool. This is great stuff. Whoa, cheapest. Why didn't I do this a long time ago? Get inspired, and then all the good qualities arise from that. So those are the 5 reasons for listening to the Dhamma. Pretty good reasons, right? It's pretty. You don't have to answer. I'm just saying this is rhetorical questions, but very, very good reasons, and it kind of gives you the opportunity to really, it's such a simple sutta. 5 things, 5 reasons why you want to listen to the Dhamma. But when you pull it apart, you realize, wow, simple teaching like that, actually, it is very, very rich. There's so much in there. Yeah, but you just have to know how to read it in the right way and connect it with the other aspects of the Dhamma. So let's move on. This is going way too slow, and that's usually what happens. So we'll have a look at the next sutta. And this sutta is called the Delightful Discourse. This is from the Long Discourses of the Buddha. This is the sutta number 29, yeah? And it is called the Sadhika Sutta in Pali, which means like delightful or inspiring or something like that. And this is just a tiny extract of a very, very long sutta. And this is what it says. And this is the Buddha speaking. Yeah, it was Uddaka Ramaputta who used to say, "He sees but does not see." What is it that seeing one does not see? You can see the blade of a well-sharpened razor, but not its edge. That is what he meant by the saying, "He sees but does not see." It spoke in reference to a low, ordinary, worldly, ignoble thing of no spiritual significance, a mere razor. So here we have one of the great sages at the time of the Buddha. Yeah, this was Uddaka Ramaputta, and I don't know if you recognize that name, but that is the name of one of the Buddha's first teachers. Yeah, if you go to the autobiography of the Buddha, there's a very famous sutta, which I really recommend you to read. It's a beautiful sutta. It's known as the Arya Pariyesana Sutta, the Noble Search. number 26 of the Middle Length Sayings. And there the Buddha talks about his life and how his awakening happened and how he practiced under these various teachers and all of that. And two of the teachers that he talks about in that sutta, one of those is Uddaka Ramaputta, the other one is Alara Kalama. And they were obviously quite famous spiritual teachers at the time of the Buddha, and that's why he went to them, and that's why he learned what they had to teach. Yeah, so you can see here that they crop up in a few places in the suttas like this. So they seem to have been real people. Yeah, they weren't just kind of, these are not just stories, but these are actually seem to have been, there is some historical connection here, yeah, between what we find here and what actually seems to have happened there. So Uddaka was a very famous teacher, and yet from the Buddha's point of view, what he had to say was not that profound. Yeah, of course, the part of the point of this kind of saying is the Buddha showing that actually what I have discovered is far more important, far more profound. The way Uddaka Ramaputta was teaching was shallow compared to the teachings that I have discovered in the Dhamma. This is part of it. Yeah, this is how you kind of have to establish yourself as a teacher, because the Buddha rejected their teachings and he went further. And for this reason, I suppose he has the right, if you like, to say that. So you see, but you do not see. Yeah, and Uddaka Ramaputta is talking about a razor, and of course, a razor, not all that interesting from the Buddha's point of view. Yes, the Buddha is going to he's going to imbue this saying with a more spiritual significance. Yeah, he was talking about an ordinary thing. You see the word vulgar there, the word vulgar, the Pali word really means something like ordinary or common or something like that, of no spiritual significance. So what does the Buddha, how does the Buddha use this same idea of seeing but not seeing? And this is what comes next here. But if one were to use that expression properly, he sees but does not see, it would be like this. What he sees is a holy way of life, which is fully successful and perfect, with nothing lacking and nothing superfluous, well proclaimed in the perfection of its purity. If he were to deduct anything from it, thinking, in this way it will be purer, he does not see it. And if he were to add anything to it, thinking, in this way it will be more complete, then he does not see it. That is the meaning of the saying, he sees but does not see. So this is the Buddha's way of kind of roaring his lion's roar, yeah, about the Dhamma and the teaching that he is given. And he's saying here that the idea here, by seeing but does not see, is that he sees that there is nothing lacking, yeah, and nothing superfluous in this particular holy life. It is fully perfect as it is, fully complete as it is already, and you cannot actually add anything, nor is there anything lacking in these teachings. And if we are to take this particular statement seriously, and I think we should, yeah, because if you have a perfect insight into the nature of reality, as the Buddha said he had, then we should take it seriously what he's saying. So the consequences of this is that when you read a sutta, when you read of the word of the Buddha, you can assume that everything there is meaningful. Yeah, every word is meaningful because there is nothing there that is superfluous. Everything there is there for a reason. Everything has been added. There's nothing that is extra to these teachings. So for that reason, it's actually very useful to contemplate the suttas carefully, to understand the different aspects of it. For example, when you read the Anapanasati Sutta, you don't skip the introductory material, or you think, oh yeah, I'll skip the introduction, I'll go straight to the breath. Yeah, I don't need this introduction. But please don't do that, because if the Buddha talks about the introductory material, it means that it is important. Yeah, it matters. It is there for a reason. Establish mindfulness first. Find a good posture. These things actually matter. And then you will have success if you take all of these things seriously. Or you look at the details of certain sutta. Sometimes the Buddha may use a word, yeah, which is kind of interesting. And this is even better if you know Pali, because it means you get even closer to the intended meaning of the Buddha. But you don't have to learn Pali. The translations today are generally very reliable. Sometimes there may be little, mistakes or things that are not, perfect or as good as they could be. But generally speaking, translations are very good. So you can rely on that. But contemplate it, yeah, think about it. Remember that every word matters. Every word is there for a reason. Nothing is superfluous. And this becomes even more important when we start to talk about soon the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, it is an eightfold path. Yeah, it's a very important point. It has 8 factors. It does not have 7 factors. Does not have 6 factors. Yeah, and this is something that we often forget. Yeah, sometimes people talk about, having the sevenfold path, samadhi, the deep samadhi, the deep meditation does not require the jhanas. Okay, forget about those. They're too difficult in the modern world. Yeah, we don't really need them. We can have a sevenfold path. But the Buddha is saying here, no, there's nothing superfluous in my teaching here. Yeah, everything is required. And when it comes to core teachings like the Noble Eightfold Path, absolutely fundamental for what the Buddha is talking about. When it comes to those teachings, it is more important than anywhere. Yeah, this is really when nothing is superfluous. Maybe you can argue that in a verse somewhere, okay, maybe one word is superfluous, but even then I wouldn't say so. But certainly not when it comes to the core teachings of the Buddha. Then really we need to be very, very clear that there's nothing there that is extra. Everything is required. Everything is part of this. Or you can go to the first of the 8 factors, yeah, the idea of right view, for example. And in that right view, they talk about the, having understanding the ideas of rebirth and karma and all of these kind of things. And these are things that quite commonly in the world today, especially in the Western world, where we, where our ideas, modern ideas, materialist ideas are quite different. We tend to reject these things. Yeah, we think, yeah, this is just ancient superstition and it is wrong. But it is not ancient superstition. Yeah, these are the teachings of the Buddha, and you may not. I don't know what kind of relationship you have to these things, but there are people today who still experience these things, who recall these things, and who understand these things. Yeah, and who have no doubt that there are such things. It happens in the present day. And so this is so important that we take these things seriously. Yeah, otherwise we undermine the very foundation of the Buddhist path, the idea of right view. I'm not saying that you have to believe in these things, that, like you believe in the Christian God or anything like that. It's not really like that. But what I'm saying is that you should be open at least to these ideas. We shouldn't reject them. If the Buddha talks about rebirth, it must mean that it matters. First factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, if we reject these things, we don't even get started on the Noble Eightfold Path. This is the first factor. We don't even, even the beginning kind of becomes problematic. Yeah, let alone the last part of the path. It's all going to really fall by the wayside unless we are careful. And so every factor of the path matters. The virtue matters. Yeah, we cannot have a practice, a Buddhism in its integrity without really focusing a lot on virtue, focusing a lot on how we live our lives. Purifying our minds is part of that virtue. Yeah, very important as well. It is all there in the path. Every factor matters. This is really my point. Nothing can be taken out. And if we take it out, what we're doing is destroying the path. That's really what it comes down to. So this is the first part of this. There's nothing superfluous. But the other thing that the Buddha is saying here, which is also, I think, equally interesting, is that nothing is lacking here. Yeah, it is complete in its own right. You don't need to add anything here. And if you look at the history of Buddhism, of these teachings going over 2,500 years, one way of thinking about Buddhism is the continual addition to the teachings. Yeah, it's the history of adding new stuff. Yeah, that's really what it is about, a lot. So in one sense, you could argue that the whole history of Buddhism in many ways is problematic because it is about adding things to the suttas. So we have to be very careful here. What I am not saying, I'm not saying that we should reject everything that comes afterwards. I'm not even saying we should reject, for example, the whole Mahayana teachings. I'm not saying we should reject the Abhidhamma entirely. I'm not saying we should reject the commentaries. What I'm saying is that we should remember the hierarchy of teachings, what comes first, and we should find our foundational faith, the basic ideas. We should go back to the suttas. Sometimes we need modern teachings. Many of the Mahayana teachings are perfectly in accord with the early Buddhist teachings like we have here. Yeah, that's fine. Sometimes the Abhidhamma may give you some interesting insights. Sometimes the Visuddhimagga may be useful. Sometimes the commentaries will help us in understanding certain terminology. Yeah, I have been having some discussions with Ayya Vimala about certain terminology in the Vinaya Pitaka, and without the commentaries, we wouldn't be anywhere. We would have no idea what these things mean. Sometimes they are absolutely necessary to understand anything at all. So I'm not saying we should throw these things out, but I'm saying we should remember that the suttas are sufficient in their own right. Yeah, you don't need to add anything to them. And when we see that later teachings maybe are adding too much to the suttas, yeah, giving extra explanations, coming up with new paths, yeah, whatever it is, coming up with entirely new ways of thinking about things, new interpretations, or this is the second wheel of the Dhamma, this is the third wheel of the Dhamma. Yeah, the Buddha was just preliminary teachings, these are the real ones, now you have to be a bodhisattva and all this kind of stuff. That is where things start to be problematic, because you are sidelining the early suttas in favor of later interpretations. So please don't do that, because then we will lose the big, what really matters. So this is what this is about. It's actually a very important teaching, I think, and it says a lot about how we should approach the Dhamma, approach these teachings. Then the Buddha says, he says that, therefore, Chunda, if anyone were to refer to any holy way of life, any spiritual life as being fully complete and perfect, it is this holy life that they would be describing here. Yeah, so in other words, his life, the Dhamma is fully complete and perfect. So yeah, I think someone hasn't turned off the microphone. Is that possible? It's a bit of a noise going on in the background there. Not sure. Okay, very good. Thank you. So then we come to the last part here, and the Buddha talking to this monk called Chunda, and so he's saying, therefore, Chunda, all you to whom I have taught these truths that I have realized by super knowledge should come together and recite them, setting meaning beside meaning and expression beside expression, without dissension, in order that this spiritual life may continue and be established for a long time for the profit and happiness of the many, out of compassion for the world, for the benefit, profit, and happiness of devas and humans. And this is again, nice summary by the Buddha of how the monastics should deal with the Dhamma, yeah? And taking these truths that he says that he has realized by super knowledge, this means by abhinya, in other words, by insight, direct insight. That's obviously a very important point. The fact that these are profound teachings that come from a direct understanding of reality. But then comes the important idea that we should come together and you should recite these things. Yeah, and this is where we know that the reciter tradition of Buddhism, actually, it goes all the way back to the time of the Buddha himself. Yeah, the monastics especially would have come together. Probably mostly the monks, maybe the nuns also were involved. There isn't much record about these things. It's hard to know, but they were recited, and so it goes all the way back to the time of the Buddha. And this is a very important point, because sometimes people say, how do we know that the suttas have been transmitted properly over 2,500 years? And the reason we know that is because the Buddhists, they inherited the way of oral transmission from the Brahmins. They used many of the same principles that the Brahmins used to transmit things orally. And then they passed that on using some of those same principles. So if we know that this recitation goes all the way back to the time of the Buddha, then we can be quite sure that what we have today is very similar, very close to what the Buddha actually taught. In fact, if you look at the evidence for that, I would argue that the evidence for that actually is very strong. Yeah, it's not perhaps that we have exactly what the Buddha taught. We don't have exactly word for word those things, but we can be very sure, I think, that the main ideas of the Buddha, and especially the Noble Eightfold Path, because we're going to talk about the Noble Eightfold Path now. Yes, the Noble Eightfold Path absolutely, definitely goes all the way back to the time of the Buddha. It is found in this way in all the schools of Buddhism and all the ancient documents that have been discovered and all of that. There is no deviation on the meaning of the Noble Eightfold Path. So this is one of the ways of knowing that. The Sangha would have come together reciting these things, setting meaning beside meaning and expression beside expression. Yeah, in other words, checking each other, making sure everyone understood what was going on without dissension, without disagreement, coming to a harmony about what these teachings are about. A very important part of the monastic life is the idea of harmony and everyone having a say and coming to an agreement through unanimity. Yeah, unanimous decision making is one of the hallmarks of how the Sangha works. It's a very beautiful way of making decisions, by the way. And the purpose of this, the purpose why we should look after the word of the Buddha, why we should care for the Pali canon, why we should care for all the early suttas, why we should have maybe websites like Sutta Central and all of these kind of things. I'm sure Ajahn Bhante Sujata will be very happy. I'm putting in a plug there for Sutta Central. The reason we have these things is precisely for what the Buddha says here, that we can keep these things for future generations, for the happiness and benefit of everyone. That is why these teachings exist. They don't exist as for intellectual purposes. They don't exist for, for showing off your ability to speak Pali, showing off your memory abilities or whatever it is. They are there for one purpose only, for practical purposes, to make humanity, make the animal realm, make everyone else have less suffering in their life and have more happiness in their life. That's the only reason why these teachings are there. And isn't that marvelous? Isn't it wonderful to have almost like a philosophy, a spiritual way of thinking, whose only purpose is to make people happy? Isn't that kind of astonishing? Yeah, you think about the most philosophers in the world and they philosophize about the meaning of life, and then they argue about each other, and they've been doing this for 2,500 years, never really getting anywhere, only ending up in arguments, and often there are egos involved and all kinds of things. It doesn't really work, does it? And yet, if you get it right, if it is based on a real insight into reality, it actually does work. And this is what the Buddha shows. And his philosophy, actually I don't like to call it philosophy because it's not really a philosophy. His psychology or his spiritual teachings, they have only that purpose, to make us more happy, to make us more content, to reduce suffering. And that is enough, isn't it? That's enough to make you feel happy when you contemplate the Dhamma, to make you feel uplifted, that there is this person 2,500 years ago who thought about all of us and who gave us these teachings simply for our happiness. And now it is our job to carry on these teachings into the future so they can be equally relevant for other people in the future. It's such a marvelous thing. It's so beautiful and so wonderful. And it's almost, once you really get into that kind of thinking, it almost brings tears to your eyes because it is so powerful to think like that. So you bring it forward to the future generations. Happiness of devas and humans, all beings, if you like. So what are these things that we should recite together? The Buddha had just called it the Dhamma just before, where he calls it this spiritual life, which basically means this Dhamma. But what exactly is this Dhamma that the Buddha is talking about? Yeah, this is the next one. What is it? What are the things that you should recite together? And what they are these. The 4 focuses of mindfulness, the 4 right efforts, the 4 factors of spiritual power, the 5 spiritual faculties, the 5 mental powers, the 7 awakening factors, and the noble Eightfold Path. These are the things you should recite together. And okay, back again. So
one moment, Ajahn.
I
have to
yeah. Okay.
start it again.
Okay, great. Yeah. Okay. Sorry about that. We seem to have a problem. I guess the problem is probably here, that the internet isn't stable or something. I don't know why that is the case, but it seems to be a problem. So anyway, so I just been showing you these things that should be recited, yeah, and these things, if you add them all up, they add up to 37, and they are known in Pali as the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas. And so these, it means 7 supports to awakening. That's what it means. And this is the core of the Dhamma, what the Buddha taught. Yeah. And if you look at those 37, what you recognize is that they're all practical things. They all have to do with development of the mind, with meditation practice, with all of these factors of the path. That is what it is about. So when the Buddha talks about the Dhamma, what he really means is the main aspect of what he means is the practice that leads to awakening. Yeah, practical, pragmatic things. Of course, there are theoretical aspect as well. Right view, you can argue that is the aspect. In other words, you need to have a framework in which you practice. You can't practice without a framework. You need to know why you are practicing, what we are trying to achieve, and all of that. Because without that, it becomes impossible, basically. So there is some theoretical aspect, but there's a minimum of theory, only really what is required to make the path work. So this is the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas. And what is interesting about them is that if you look carefully, they actually reduce down to the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, it is just an expansion of the Noble Eightfold Path, these 37 Bodhipakya. And I will show you that in a second, how that actually works. So while we do focus on the Noble Eightfold Path later on, we are also focusing on the other aspects of these 37. So these 7 will be elucidated as we go along with this. But one of the interesting things about these 37, if you look at them, if you pull them apart, and you look at all the individual factors, that are made up, you will see that there are certain factors that occur many, many times. For example, right effort. Right effort occurs in the Noble Eightfold Path. It occurs in the spiritual faculties. It is called energy there, but basically it's related. You have the 4 right efforts. It occurs there. So you find it in many different places in this 37. And then you have the Satipatthana, the mindfulness meditations, the 7 of the Noble Eightfold Path, right sati, meditation practice. That too occurs in a number of places. It occurs in the faculties and the powers. It occurs in the 7 factors of awakening and the Noble Eightfold Path. And also it is its own set, the 4 focuses of mindfulness. And then the last one, which occurs a lot, is samadhi. Samadhi also occurs a lot. So these 3 things, occur throughout these things again and again and again. Right effort, right meditation, and then right samadhi or right stillness. I prefer right stillness myself at the very end there. So what is it about these 3 things special? There are other aspects of the path. We have mentioned that already, the idea of sila, of kindness and right view and all of that. But what is it about these three things that are special? Right effort, right meditation, and right stillness. And what is special about them is that these are the aspects of mental development. Yeah. Right effort is about learning how to think or perceive the world in the right way, to relate to the world in the right way. So we reduce the defilements and we give rise to good qualities. Samasati is all about developing your meditation, overcoming the remaining hindrances of the mind and all of that, focusing on the breath. And then the right stillness is then the outcome of all of that, when the mind really unifies and comes together very powerfully. So it's all about mental development. And that says you something very important about the Buddhist path. Yeah, it is about developing the aspect of Buddhist practice, learning how to apply your mind in the right way. And this does not mean that Buddhism is all about meditation practice. But what it means rather is that it is about how we use our mind, whether outside meditation or inside meditation. How do you use your mind when you interact with
Okay, Ajahn, you're back.
Okay, good. This is terrible. I don't know, has anyone made some bad karma recently? I'm not sure. No, I'm just joking. I'm just messing around. This is just the nature of samsara. It's always problematic like this. So what we see that these 37 use to the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, you have the 4 focuses of mindfulness. I should say again that I don't like the translation 4 foundations of mindfulness. To me, it gives the wrong meaning. It is not about how you create mindfulness, it's about how we use mindfulness in meditation practice. Yeah. So the 4 focuses of mindfulness. And of course, these focuses, they are equivalent to the 7th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. So they slot in to the 7th factor. Yeah. Then we have the 4 right efforts, which is equivalent to the 6th factor of the Noble Eightfold Path, right effort. So they slot into right effort. Then we have the 4 aspects of spiritual power. It's called roads to power here. I don't really quite like that. I would call it more the 4 aspects of spiritual power. We are trying to develop spiritual qualities. That is really all about, it's about a number of things, but it certainly is about samadhi, which is the last one. Yeah, it is also a little bit about effort and meditation practice, but the focus is on samadhi. So that kind of slots in to the samadhi aspect. Yeah, the last factor of the Noble Eightfold Path slots into that one. Then we have the 5 spiritual faculties and the 5 powers. And somebody actually asked the question. I'll come back to the questions in very someone asked a question. I can answer that now, maybe. What is the difference between the two? And the answer is that it's not very obvious at all that there is any difference. Basically, there's one sutta which pretty much says that they are the same. So I wouldn't bother trying to find a difference. And even if there is a difference, it's probably very minor. It may just be a matter of different names, different viewpoints on the same kind of ideas. Yeah. So what are these? Well, these are the Noble Eightfold Path seen from the perspective of the noble ones, people who have internalized the path, who have seen with insight the teachings of the Buddha. They practice the path in a different way because their wisdom is complete, their confidence in the path is complete, so they know what they're doing. So this is how they practice the path. It's from that particular perspective. Yeah. So that is those 10 factors, and then we have the 7 factors of awakening. And the 7 factors of awakening, they start off with sati, they're called sati sambojjhanga, and then it goes up to what is called the upekkha sambojjhanga, so the awakening factor of mindfulness and the awakening factor of equanimity, and then all the factors in between. So this is like an expansion of the last 2 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, it is like a detailed expansion of the ideas of mindfulness, going all the way to upekkha, to equanimity, which is like the highest kind of samadhi, according to the sutras. It has everything in between. So it is an expansion of that. And then the last one is the Noble Eightfold Path. Yeah, so that shows you how all of these factors, they belong together. They're part of a whole. It's just that they are divided up a little bit so as to kind of point out some more of the details of these things. So that is that for the talk today, and that is just to give you a little bit of background for the Noble Eightfold Path, to give you the idea that the suttas, if you want to find out what the Noble Eightfold Path is, we should always go back to the suttas. And in a sense, you can see the Buddha here is basically saying that this Noble Eightfold Path, or if you like the 37 Bodhipakya Dhammas, whatever you want to call it, this is the essence of his teaching. This is what it is really about. It's practical. It's about how we live, not about how we philosophize, how we argue about these teachings. Okay, that is it for today, this morning. So let's carry on with the questions. I'll just carry on, Aya, if that's...
Yes, that's fine. I just want to make you aware that there are no interviews today.
Oh, really?
Signed up for today. Everything's next week.
Okay. So shall I carry on a little bit longer with the questions then? Is that a good idea?
Yes, maybe. There's quite a few questions, so that would be good. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So let's see.
I also put I've put the first one in the chat already, so I don't know if that's easier for you.
Okay, yeah, it doesn't matter so much. I noticed that there was one that you didn't answer yesterday, Aya. Would you like me to answer that one? Or?
No, but because I had a question and I spoke about it in the break when you dropped out. I had a question of what exactly that person meant with like aversion towards the unwholesome thoughts, or what that exactly. So I asked them to type a little bit more on that topic, and then I'll answer it tonight.
Okay. Okay, good. Yep. Okay. So let's have a look at some of these questions. So the first one is, Dear Ajahn, if I just watch body sensations during meditation because the breath is in the background, is this already too much doing and also giving too much interest to the body? Thank you for your time. It all depends on how you do it. Yeah, for example, I know that in the Goenka technique, they use the visualization a lot, and Ajahn Brahmali is probably a bit of an expert on this. I certainly am not. But remember that meditation or anything in Buddhism is the way you value it, the way you decide whether it's working or not, is if it gives rise to good results. Yeah. So remember that the results that we're trying to give rise to here is peace and calm, and kind of a gradual deepening of that peace and calm, moving towards samadhi eventually. Yeah, that's where we want to go. So if the technique you are doing leads you in the right direction, then it is fine. So you have to ask yourself, are you kind of getting those positive results? Are you finding that the hindrances, the defilements of the mind are kind of getting less and less, and all the positive qualities are increasing? And if they are, then you know that you're heading in the right direction. So it doesn't matter so much. Down the track, if you do find that you are getting more and more peaceful, there will come a time when you almost naturally will want to stop watching the sensations in the body because they're just too busy. There's too much going on, and you won't be able to enjoy it anymore at a certain point, and you will want to go to something more refined, yeah, like just the breath or just enjoying the peace or whatever it is. So you have to feel your way through this. And there's also, you know, if you do the meditation long enough and you have success and the mind really becomes peaceful, there will often come a time when there will be kind of light maybe flashing in your meditation practice. There will be these things we often call nimittas. Nimittas like powerful lights that come up in your meditation practice. And when that happens, you certainly want to get rid of the, don't want to focus on the body anymore, because that will be very, very disruptive for those very peaceful states of mind. So you have to feel your way through this, yeah, and feel what works and what does not work for you. Even when it comes to the focusing on the sensation in the body, the way that the Buddha talks about the progress of mindfulness of breathing, he talks about watching the long breath, then the short breath, yeah, and this is just how the breath tends to develop and nothing you have to do with it. Then it talks about the sabbakaya patisangvedi, which is the third step. And this is where sometimes this is understood to mean experiencing the whole body, yeah, physical body. So let's say that that's what you do. And then after that, it talks about pasangbayang, not pasangbayang, what is that next step again? Kaya sankarang pasambati, I think it is, the fourth step of anapanasati, which means calming down. The kaya sankara, which means the breath, is defined like that everywhere in the suttas. So you can see that if you practice the breath meditation and you do some contemplation of the body, it is like there is breath on both sides. First of all, the long breath, the short breath, and on the other side of watching the body perhaps is in the calming the breath, yeah? And in the middle there is this kind of gray area which is open to interpretation. Some interpret it as watching the physical body. Personally, I think that it should be interpreted as watching the whole body of the breath. That's what I think is the right interpretation there, for many reasons. I won't go into that now. But regardless, you should be
Yes, you are back on, Ajahn.
Okay, thank you. Marvelous. Okay, so that was the first question. Let's go on to the second one. Dear Ajahn, I have a chronic debilitating pain and back problem and can't meditate on a cushion or a chair. But if I meditate while lying down, I go to sleep within 5 minutes. How to meditate in this situation? Could you please elaborate a bit more on the sutta where Venerable Mahamoggallana nods off while meditating? I'm struggling, really struggling with sloth and torpor at the moment. Okay, I would suggest that you continue using it lying down. Yeah, if you nod off and you go to sleep, I wouldn't worry too much about that. That's just par for the course, as they say, and enjoy your sleep. Yeah. Don't feel bad about going to sleep in your meditation. It's not as if you're a bad or evil meditator just because you go to sleep. Sometimes that's where the mind is heading. Sometimes you can't do anything about it. Sitting up, I mean, even if sitting up helps, often it is because you are forcing the body. Yeah, you're forcing yourself to be more awake because of the posture, not really necessarily because the mind has got rid of the tiredness of the mind. So I would focus on ways to becoming more alert. Yeah, I can increase the alertness, and that is really what matters. And some of the most important, I think, instructions for overcoming these kind of defilements. I don't think the sutta with Venerable Mahamoggallana is necessarily the best one, because that sutta is meant for really good meditators who already have really good samadhi. Yeah, maybe you already have very good samadhi. I don't know. If you do, then you can go to that sutta. But I think most people, they struggle at more preliminary stages with sloth and torpor. And one of the most important things is to remember that tiredness and lethargy, yeah, which I prefer as a translation for tinna midda, which is the Pali word behind sloth and torpor. Tiredness and lethargy, usually it is the outcome of other defilements of the mind. It is not something that you can deal with on its own. Sometimes you can deal with it on its own, but that is only if you are a really advanced meditator like Mahamoggallana. Then you can deal with it on its own, because it is only like a refined remnant of a hindrance in the mind. But usually it is the outcome of other kinds of defilements. And the two main problems for all meditators is actually the main one. Number one is the first of the 5 hindrances, yeah, sensory desire. desire for the sensory world, attachment to that sensory world, not just desire, but attachment to that whole sensory world, it blocks you from really entering meditation very, very well. That's the first one. So one of the things that you can remind yourself of in your meditation, and I like this, it's especially powerful now. And now the world seems to be so problematic with all the COVID problems and all the political instability everywhere and the climate change coming up as a massive thing on the horizon and all of these kind of things. And the world seems so out of control. Yeah, it seems like no one is in charge. And of course, the reality is no one is in charge. Everyone are just people like us trying to make this world work out. And when I look at myself and I see all my own flaws, I think no wonder this world has a problem. Yeah, everyone is like me, or that we have a lot of ignorance in this world. They're trying to sort out problems that are very complicated and difficult. And when you remind yourself of the reality of this world, of all the problems, of the endless problems in your own life, how it just goes from one thing to the next one, you withdraw some of your interest in that world outside. And that is a very important part of meditation practice and of lessening that defilement of the mind, which stops you from, or which often tends towards sloth and torpor, or can do. But the other defilement, which is perhaps even more important as far as sloth and torpor or tiredness and lethargy is concerned, that is ill will.
Ajahn, may I suggest that we stop after this question? Obviously, the internet is too unstable today.
Yeah. Okay. And, the appreciation of the people around us, the people in the Buddhist community, the people in the meditation community, people like Ayya Vimala, who is going to all of this trouble to make these online retreats work out. And even though it is actually probably easier for you, Ayya, isn't it, than having a physical retreat? That's probably far more work, actually. But
well, we don't have to cook.
anyway, retreat centers, all that kind of stuff. So, and so actually there is a lot of kindness in the world, a lot of goodness, a lot of people with good hearts, and celebrate that, yeah. And then have a compassionate for people, and then gradually you bring your mind around. You have to find out what the root reason for that tiredness and lethargy is. I suspect where you will find that root reason for the problem. Very often you cannot deal with the lethargy and tiredness directly. You have to look at the more distant causes for why these things happen, and then I think you will have some success. But I would really suggest that you continue lying down if you have all of those back problems, and eventually the clarity will return. You just have to keep on contemplating why the problem arises, and eventually I'll guarantee you, if you keep on persevering and with persistence, guarantee you that eventually you will have success. Okay, everyone, I will stop there because our internet connection seems to be controlled by Mara today. So we're going to just allow Mara to kind of work in his own or her own realm. I'm not sure what gender it is. I'm probably both genders. And then I'll see you again tomorrow. So take care, everyone, and we'll see you again.
Ajahn, you won't be back tomorrow. You're going to be in Dhammaloka, I think.
Okay, Sunday.
Sunday.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
So,
okay.
I wish everybody a very nice rest of the day, and I'll be back at 3 o'clock with the guided meditation, and then in the evening again with the meditation and chanting and questions and answers. So Ajahn, thank you so much, and we're looking forward to seeing you back again on Sunday. And
bye-bye.
I put Sirifara tomorrow.